everyone, it's Katie from Paradise Falls family. We're a family of 4 from England who love to travel and explore the world together. In this short vlog series, we'll be covering our week in Norway in December 2024. We spent some time in both Oslo and Tromso over New Year with our friends and had a wonderful time. In today's video, I'll cover our time in Oslo. We decided to book this trip as we love a winter holiday and wanted to get away and enjoy the snow. If you've visited our channel before, you'll have seen that we've previously visited Lapland and Iceland. For our next trip, we initially looked at a ski holiday but were put off by the cost. We also looked at heading back to Lapland but eventually settled on Norway for somewhere new and different. We wanted to head to the far north to guarantee snow and to try and see the Northern Lights, which pointed us to Tromso, somewhere we've considered visiting before. Tromso is a wonderful destination, a lovely town in the far north of Norway, with almost guaranteed snow over the winter, the opportunity to see the Northern Lights, to go whale watching and to enjoy all sorts of different activities. There are some direct flights from the UK, but the budget airlines don't always release their schedules a year in advance. Given that we were visiting over New Year and new accommodation would book up quickly, we wanted to book early and nail down our travel dates. So we opted to travel via Oslo with Scandinavian and Norwegian airlines, both of whom had their flights available almost a year in advance. We settled on 2 nights in Oslo, flying out on the 28th of December with Scandinavian Airlines, before then flying up to Tromso on the 30th with Norwegian Airlines. We enjoyed 4 nights in Tromso over New Year and then flew back to Oslo for another 2 nights, arriving home in Manchester on the 5th of January. Oslo wasn't somewhere particularly high on our list to visit, but it worked out to be the best flight option for us, so we took the opportunity to spend some time in the city and explore. We arrived in Oslo on a Saturday evening. Our flight with Scandinavian or SAS was great. We normally pay to reserve seats together, but SAS have a policy that they sit families together, so that was very much appreciated and saved us some money. Once we arrived, it was very easy to find our way through the airport to the train station. There are a couple of different trains you can get into the city. There's an airport shuttle train, which is around £34 for a family of 4 to travel into the city. The train takes around 30 minutes and runs every 20 minutes or so. Or there's a local train service that also stops at the airport and city centre and only costs around £19 per family, with a similar schedule. We decided to use this as it was by far the easiest and most cost-effective option, with a taxi by comparison expected to cost somewhere around £80. The train was really easy. We bought tickets from the machine and were able to hop on with all of our luggage. We got off at the National Theatrette station in the centre, from where it was just a 10-minute walk to our hotel. Not that easy with all of the luggage, but not too bad. With 2 separate stays in the city, we made the decision to stay at 2 different hotels. We didn't have a massive budget for this trip, so wanted to stay at different places in case we weren't keen on the hotels themselves. The first was the Thon Hotel Slottsparken. It's located right next to the Royal Palace and was in a really good spot for exploring the city. The hotel cost us just over £300 for the 2 nights, so really good value for a city centre stay. The Thon hotels are a chain operating across Scandinavia, and so we thought it would be a reliable option. We were able to check in easily and settled into our room. We'd booked a non-smoking business room, which was great. It was nice and spacious, with a double bed and a double sofa bed, which was surprisingly comfy. This was spread across 2 open-plan rooms with a TV and dining area. There was loads of room for all of our luggage, and we were very comfortable here. The bathroom was fine, perhaps a bit small and basic, but it was good enough for a few nights here. The really impressive aspect to this hotel though was the breakfast. This was included in the cost of the stay, and given the price of food in Norway, it made it incredible value. Breakfast was served downstairs in the restaurant each morning, which was a lovely space and it has loads of seating. Breakfast was buffet style with a really impressive selection. There was loads of hot and cold options, allergy friendly options like gluten-free bread and cereal, and it was excellent quality. So we made sure to fill up here each morning so we only needed a lighter lunch. As usual, we'd done our planning in advance and decided that there were two main things we wanted to enjoy in the city. The Christmas markets, which were running until New Year's Eve, and the Trekkeren sled run. This is a 2-kilometre sled run on a former Olympic bobsleigh trail outside of the city. You get the metro out to Frognerseteren station, rent your sled and then sled down to the next metro station and get the train back to the top. It sounds amazing. Unfortunately for us though, it was closed on both of our visits. First because there wasn't enough snow, and then again because the ice was too hard and dangerous to sled on. So this was really disappointing, but we did manage to still do a bit of sledging in the snow, which I'll come on to later. Outside of these two things, we generally just wanted to explore the city and see some of the sights. Oslo itself is relatively small and easy to explore. The centre is pretty compact and centres around the main street, Karl Johans Gate. This runs from the Oslo S train station in the east up to the Royal Palace in the west, and it's also within walking distance to the waterfront, so we were able to explore most places on foot. If you want to venture further out though, Oslo does have an excellent public transport system with an underground metro, a tram system, buses and even ferries out to some of the islands. We only ever used the tram system, but it was all very easy to use using the Router app to plan our journey, so make sure to download this. For our first evening, we headed out to enjoy the Christmas markets, the main one of which is located on Karl Johans Gate, near the National Theatret train station, not too far from the Royal Palace and our hotel. It's called Jul Vinterland and it's similar to any typical European Christmas market. It was actually quite small, or smaller than we were expecting, but it was still a lovely atmosphere with a lot to do. There's one main run of stalls selling lots of amazing foods, gifts and treats, and a couple of attractions like a big wheel and a helter-skelter, a cool tunnel of lights where we got some lovely pictures, and then an ice rink. The main thing I would say is that we did find it very expensive. The food in Norway is really pricey, and we found that we spent a fortune. For example, fries and drinks for the four of us came to nearly £60. So be prepared, you're going to need a decent budget for food while you're here. The rides were also pretty expensive and worked on a ticket system that we never fully worked out, but it seemed expensive. Ice skating came to about £10 per person for skate rental, which didn't feel too bad. But having said that, the skates themselves were really terrible and flimsy, which made actual ice skating nigh on impossible. The rink itself wasn't manned, so it was a bit of a free-for-all with people everywhere, some in skates, some in shoes, and lots of expert locals flying by. The surface was fairly plasticky, so to be honest, we weren't that impressed with the ice rink here. Despite this though, the setting was still really lovely, and we enjoyed sitting in the covered bar next to the ice rink afterwards, watching everyone try to skate around. We spent our first full day in the city exploring on foot, beginning at the Royal Palace right by our hotel. You can go right up to the palace and get photos with the guards, and there's also a changing of the guard at around 1:30 each day. I believe you can also take tours of the palace at certain times of the year, and then there's lovely gardens surrounding the palace to explore as well. From here we wandered down to the waterfront and to the Akershus pier. This is where you can find the National Museum and the Nobel Peace Centre. The Nobel Peace Prize is awarded in Oslo every year, so they have a museum dedicated to the award. It did sound really interesting, but we knew the kids probably wouldn't appreciate it as much, so we decided to skip it this time. The pier here is where a lot of the boat tours depart from, out into the fjords. We hadn't initially planned on doing one of these, but they seemed fairly good value at around £60 for a family of 4, so we decided to give it a go. We booked with Troll Cruise there and then on the day. This gave us a 2-hour scenic cruise around the harbour and out into the fjords on an electric boat. This had 2 decks and loads of room. Most of the seating was inside, which was great given how cold it was. It had a snack bar, restrooms and was really comfy. We saw some brilliant views and it was a lovely cruise around the fjords. I think the kids got a little bit bored. It was very scenic but not massively exciting, but it was still worth the trip nonetheless. Back on land, we carried on around through Radhusplassen and past City Hall to the Akershus Festning, which is one of the top sights to see in the city. This is basically a massive waterside fortress which is free to explore, and it's really impressive with great views back down to the harbour. Inside there's a small castle, the Resistance Museum and the Armed Forces Museum, all of which are an extra charge. We were happy just to wander the fortress walls and explore, and the kids loved this, but you could spend quite a bit of time here if you wanted to pop into the museums as well. From here, it was around a 20-minute walk along to the second harbour by the impressive Opera House. Again, this is another top site, a must-do and an iconic building in the city. You can walk up onto the roof of the Opera House for free to enjoy views back across the city and the water. If it takes your fancy, then this harbour is where a lot of the saunas are located. You can take a dip in the icy water and then jump straight back into your sauna. It did actually look really nice and cosy, but we just didn't dare give it a go. Next to the Opera House is the Munch Museum. If you're an art lover, you can stop in here and see the famous screen painting. Or if you head inland across the city, you'll reach the Oslo S train station, which is the main train station in the city. There's loads of restaurants and shops in this area of the city, and we had a lovely meal at Olivia's for around £90 for the 4 of us, which felt much better value for money compared to fries at the market the night before. From here, it was a straight walk up Karl Johan's Gate to the palace and then back to our hotel. On the way back, we did a bit of shopping, and there's some more sights along the way, including Oslo Cathedral and the Parliament building. We made sure to stop again at the Christmas markets to get some treats, and this is where we gave ice skating a try, before we headed back and called it a night. I think we'd done our fair share of walking, but enjoyed a lovely day in the city. The next morning we headed back to the airport on the local train to fly up to Tromso, which I'll cover in the next vlog. We returned 4 nights later, this time staying at the Scandic Byporten, another chain hotel in Scandinavia. This one was located at the other end of Karl Johan's Gate, adjoining the Oslo S train station, so probably a slightly better location in terms of eating out and shopping. However, our room was probably the smallest we've ever stayed in. We couldn't quite believe it, particularly given that we'd booked a family room. It came with a double bed and a small bunk bed, but had very little floor space, so manoeuvring around the suitcases was like a game of Tetris. It was nice enough, with a nice view of the square outside, very clean and did the job, but it just wasn't that comfortable given the room size. I think if you're a couple with limited luggage on a city break, then it'd be fine. But as a family of 4 with a lot of luggage, less so. Having said that, if you can get over the room size, the hotel was lovely. The staff were really nice and really helpful in sorting us a taxi to the airport, as we had to leave early before the trains were running. And then there was again breakfast included in the rate in the restaurant attached to the hotel, which was buffet style, excellent quality, loads of choice and amazing value. We paid around £260 for 2 nights here, which for a decent hotel in a capital city with breakfast included, we felt was brilliant. We generally found the cost of accommodation to be really reasonable and helped offset the extra food costs. As I mentioned earlier, our plan was to try the sled run today, and while it had snowed a fair amount, the run still wasn't open. So we did a bit of research and found the Ekebergparken on the edge of the city seemed like a good option to get out and find somewhere the kids could play in the snow and maybe do some sledging. We hopped on the tram out here, which drops you right in the middle of the park, and enjoyed a good half day wandering the park, which was also a sculpture park, and enjoying the snow. Unfortunately, we couldn't find anywhere to rent or buy sledges, so we had to settle for bin bags, which we happened to have left over from our Airbnb stay in Tromso. Nevertheless, we still had a great time, and it was a lovely last day to our trip. The park was full of locals sledging down the hill here, so I think it's a great place to visit if this is what you're after. If you want to stay a little longer, there's a small museum, cafe and restaurant in the park itself, but we jumped back on the tram into the city for a bit more shopping and dinner at TGI Fridays right by the hotel. We'd enjoyed a lovely few days in Oslo and had a really good time. I think it's fair to say it's a quieter city. For example, we found a lot of the shops shut on Sundays, and it didn't ever seem massively busy. But everyone was really friendly, and we found there was more than enough to enjoy a fun couple of days. I've already mentioned the cost of food here, but we were pleasantly surprised at how reasonable the hotels and some of the attractions were, as well as the public transport. So on the balance of things, it's probably comparable to lots of other European cities. Of course, we weren't able to see everything in just 2 days, and there's plenty more we didn't get to. I've mentioned a couple of museums already, and the city does have a lot of good museums you can visit, including the Viking Planet, which we probably would have visited with another half day spare. The Fram Museum, dedicated to the famous ship and polar exploration, and the Norse Folk Museum, another place we really looked at. This is an open-air museum and looked like an interesting walkthrough of Norwegian history. We just didn't have time to get out here and take a look for ourselves. Further afield, there's a second sculpture park called Vigelandsparken, and then one of the top sites is the Holmenkollen ski jump, around 30 minutes outside the city but easily accessible on the metro. There's apparently amazing views from the top and a ski museum and cafe on site. In the summer months you can also zip line down from the top, something we really fancied, but as this wasn't running in the winter, we decided against heading out here. Perhaps if the sled run was open, we might have stopped here on the way, but it wasn't to be. So that covers our time in Oslo. In the next video, I'll talk through our time in Tromso, which we sandwiched between our 2 Oslo stays. So subscribe to our channel to make sure you catch that. If there's anything you want to ask about this trip, then please let us know in the comments below. Also, if you like this video, please give it a like as it really makes a big difference to the channel. Thank you all so much for watching.